is Dr. Jennifer Ann Morrow. And fun fact, Jennifer and I met a number of years ago when I was a graduate student. She probably doesn't remember me, but her and my mentor worked very well together. And it is so cool to be able to work with her right now, 15, 20 years later. She is an associate professor of evaluation statistics and methodology at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And she has trained emerging assessment and evaluation professionals for the past 20 years. She has also conducted hundreds of assessment and evaluation projects for higher ed, K-12, and other community organizations. And her main research interests are training emerging assessment and evaluation professionals, effective strategies for teaching methodology courses, and college student development. One of my things, I love college student development as well. Nikki Christen is a fourth-year doctoral student in the Evaluation Statistics and Methodology program at UT Knoxville. I have heard that maybe this might be her year that she's done with her research, but so we'll all keep our fingers crossed and put those good vibes in the air. Her research interests include higher ed assessment, survey research methodology, and data visualization. Very cool, Nikki. We need a lot more data visualization people. She has spent nearly a decade as a college-wide assessment coordinator and is currently an evaluation specialist with the National Institute for STEM Evaluation and Research at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. So welcome to them both. I will put a couple of links in the chat. Both Nikki and Jennifer will be utilizing Jamboard. So if you have questions, please put them in Jamboard so they can address your questions. And so I will let them take it away, and I'll put the tiny URLs in the chat for people to see. All right, Jennifer, your turn.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Tisha. Yeah, you did a great job. This is us, cool pictures. But we're excited that you decided to join us today, and we're going to have a number of Jamboard questions throughout this webinar, and then we'll have some time at the end for kind of an Ask Us Anything. And so, if you have a burning question you want us to answer, just put it in Jamboard or wait till the end of our session. So I'm just to briefly go over our agenda for today. Again, we're going to be doing a lot of conversations, facilitating conversations in Jamboard. We're going to tell you a little bit about how we both got started in assessment, building partnerships and what strategies that have worked for us, barriers and issues, because sometimes that happens, and how we dealt with them, some strategies and some suggestions for you all if you are looking to build and reignite partnerships with faculty and assessment professionals, and then some resources. And the resources that we're going to point you to today, they all can be found on the tiny URL on the screen and the QR code that takes you to a Google folder that is open to anyone. You can download those materials as well as this PowerPoint from that folder. So first we want to hear a little bit from you, like, who are you? What is your primary job role? And so if you go to this tiny URL, this Jamboard link, and then click on the sticky note, it is the fourth icon on your left-hand side. Just insert your response. So you should have permission to be able to go into there. Just click on that sticky icon, type in whatever your primary job role, so we can kind of get an idea of who is in the audience today. And then you can move it anywhere on the screen. And I'll be saving these Jamboards and uploading them to that shared folder. So you'll have all of this information after the webinar. So we have some dual roles: associate professor, director of assessment, assistant professor.
With a lot of hats, wear a lot of hats in their position.
That is not surprising. We're expecting Director of Institutional Effectiveness, Outcomes and Assessment Specialist. It's obviously all related to assessment, but we do have some faculty roles here as well.
Very cool.
Awesome. And so you can all see that as well. Let me share that Jamboard and see what we have here. Hopefully you can all see that. So you can see we have, again, most of us are all in assessment. We do have a few that are also in these dual faculty roles as well. Doesn't look like anyone is just straight faculty like myself. At least it hasn't disclosed. And like I said, I will share all of these as well. Now let's go back to that presentation. All right, Nikki, you can see that presentation. Just make sure I'm right. All right,
Yes.
awesome. I love it.
Good.
When technology works for me, it's great. So we want to just give you a little history of us and kind of how we both, I guess, ended up in assessment. I definitely fell into assessment. So I was a doctoral student many years ago now in experimental psychology, and ended up being a GRA at a middle school assessment organization. Did that for a couple months, and then took a full-time position there. Lasted a year, realized that being a full-time assessment professional was not my calling, but what I really loved was being able to train emerging assessment and evaluation professionals. So continued on with my PhD, and right out of my PhD program, took a faculty position at Old Dominion University. And then now I'm here at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And over the last 22 plus years, I have worked with a number of universities, K-12 organizations, community-based organizations. So lately, especially in the last 10 or so years, focused primarily on higher education organizations, assisting people with their assessment and evaluation projects. Nikki?
Yeah. All right. So I am the exhibit A for those of us that have an eclectic background and how they fell into assessment. So I started out actually in law enforcement. I was in law enforcement for over a decade, and I was anything from corrections to 911 specialist, trainer, you name it, I did it. But my specialty in that was the assessment and analyst, doing the crime statistics and all those numbers for the state and federal government for all of our agencies. So that's how I first got to know the process. So I got my bachelor's in that, and then I went on to my master's in information science, and I specialized in the database management and information systems in that regard. So all these systems that we use to collect and analyze data and all that fun stuff, all the tools that we now use to make this world go round in assessment, that's what I specialized in my master's of information science. After that, I spent nearly a decade as a College of Education assessment coordinator, working with over 2,000 students and 80 plus faculty members and 60 something programs for about 10 years. So that's when I really got thrown into assessment, like many of us do, and how it got me to this point today. I'm currently, like I said, in the PhD program for evaluation, statistics, and methodology. Hopefully should finish that up this year if I survive a dissertation. But I'm also currently an evaluation specialist as part of my role. I'm also one of the data visualization experts in my office as well. So I like having that eclectic background because I've found that it gives me the skill set to do a plethora of things in our office, and gives me plenty of options as far as where I can help folks in the field and in our programs.
And a fun fact, I met Nikki when she was in her master's program. And as soon as she finished, I tried recruiting her multiple times for our PhD program. She kept on saying no over and over again.
For 5 years, 6.
Yes, yeah, about 5 years. Yeah, we kept in touch. So again, from her, I learned a lot about what it's really like to be an assessment professional, but finally convinced her now 4 years ago to come to our program. So it's been great to collaborate with her. So here's a little bit about our story and how, and throughout this webinar, we're going to talk about how we built our partnership, but also weave in and talk a little bit about other partnerships that we've had that and what worked for those and what didn't work. Some things to kind of think about as you are putting yourself out there to build some of these partnerships with faculty and other assessment professionals. So with the partnership, this most recent one with Nikki and a couple other amazing colleagues, which I'll talk about in a second. I was just finishing up a couple of projects with another group, and we had started talking about competencies. What does it mean to be competent in this profession? What are those needed competencies? And so Nikki and I were having a conversation, and what's great about Nikki is because at the time she was working as an assessment professional, and especially as an N of 1, she had to wear many hats, many more hats than I ever kind of really thought about. And so as we were talking about this, we talked about that there's such diversity among higher ed assessment professionals, where they come from in terms of their degrees and their backgrounds, what they actually do on a daily basis, what resources they have, what is needed, what professional development is needed. And so that got us kind of, talking about this and what could we do to do some research in this area. And this is going to be advice that we're going to talk about and give to you throughout this session today, is we sought out other people, other experts, because we knew that just the two of us together, while we work great together, we needed other individuals with different opinions, different experiences to help us and work together on some of these project ideas. And so we connected with Dr. Gina Polychronopoulos and Dr. Emily Lucas-Cleaterman. They are amazing. And what I loved about them is, again, they come from counseling background. They have a ton of experience as higher ed assessment professionals, as well as teaching emerging professionals. And so having them come on board, and so the four of us work together, has been working together the last couple of years now on a variety of projects looking at this area. Anything else you want to add, Nikki?
No, it's just we realized we needed a more holistic approach to the things that we were needing, because I had the primarily administration experience. Jennifer was faculty experience. We knew we needed more than that. She and I are more quant orientated, and the other two are more qual. So we knew we needed to balance. So we were not afraid to reach out to other folks and say, hey, we need somebody to help, make this team more eclectic, definitely, but more rounded in skill set.
Yes, definitely. So we would love to hear from you. What do you think makes a successful collaboration between faculty and higher ed assessment professionals? What are those key skills or competencies or situations that will help with that successful collaboration? So if you go to that Jamboard link, it is the second Jamboard in this session. Just use either the text box or the sticky note and tell us what you think. And we're going to tell us what had worked for us. See a few of you in there. And the link to the Jamboard is also in the chat as well. I'm going to actually share that Jamboard. Yes, mutual respect. Absolutely.
Patience. Patience and empathy.
Listening, communication. Yeah, I mean, you could do this webinar for us. I think we're going to be talking about many of these. Open transparency.
Yes.
Yes, glossaries, definitions. It's amazing. I've been working in different research collaborations with assessment professionals, both K through 12 and higher ed, over the last 20 plus years. And how we've defined assessment has been different. How we've defined evaluation has been different. So yeah, sometimes, just sharing that and getting on the same page is really important. Yeah, sharing. Everyone brings something to the table.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, others need to take baby steps, regular training.
Excellent responses.
Yeah.
and many things that have come up in our discussions with other assessment folks. So that's good to see the consistency.
Allowing faculty as much autonomy as possible. I don't know if any of my colleagues would want that for me, but I get it. I get it. I'm
Yeah.
on the other side. I love it. Outcomes that can be measured and understood. Oh, this is excellent. It's excellent. All right, let's go back. And like I said, I will share all of these in that shared folder. So what has worked for Nikki and I, again, not just within this most recent partnership, but kind of across all the different partnerships that we've had over the years. But as we've kind of already started talking about, what's really worked with this partnership and others is bringing different people to the table, that those different expertise. I don't want to work with someone just like me. I don't need another survey researcher. I don't need another quant heavy person. I don't need necessarily another faculty member in my discipline, but having individuals from, different job titles, different methodology background, different assessment work experiences has really made the conversations much more informative, much more lively. In my just most recent collaboration, Emily is a assessment professional at a community college. So getting that perspective was really unique to me. And I didn't know a lot about what it's like to work in a community college setting. And so getting these different experiences helps us give a little bit more of a holistic approach to what we're doing. Brainstorming, while we knew we wanted to work on some different projects, we didn't rush it. We didn't have this timeline. And I know sometimes we have a deadline or timeline that we must do X by this particular date, but we decided that we wanted to just kind of see what are we all interested in. So Nikki, if you want to talk a little bit more about how we kind of approach this brainstorming.
The brainstorming, we use specifically technology tools to get our ideas all in one location for one. That's how we decided our goals, roles, and timelines. That way each of us knew what is to be expected. So I didn't have to worry about this ABC part because Jennifer was covering that. XYZ was going to be covered by Emily. We set that up front because, again, we're all working professionals on top of this. Even though this is something we absolutely love, we realize we still got to, work our jobs and build those relationships as well. So we did that to just make everything as clear as possible up front. And then we went ahead and we scheduled our regular meetings. So we knew that on this time of the month or this quarter or whatever we were working on in that particular project, we were going to meet, go over things, check in with everybody. Hey, how's life? How's your process? Anything that we can, just talk through or something that came up or anything like that. But the last item there, also for changing roles as needed. Sometimes life happens. We all know this. My March has been very different than what I thought it would turn out to be. I had to change my hats several times in March just to get things accomplished. So those things, we just kind of knew what to cover by having all those items decided and lined out very clearly up front.
Yeah, no, excellent. And when we were brainstorming, we talked about all of our different ideas and what research we wanted to focus on. And then we kind of split things up and like, okay, what is Jen most passionate about? What is Gina most passionate about? And said, okay, well, what is our ideal timeline? Where do we want to start this? Who wants to take the lead? What roles are we going to do on each of these projects? And because we're all from different backgrounds and we have different things we want to accomplish, but also, as a faculty member, I have that pressure. I am tenured, but I have that pressure like, hey, you're supposed to do these different things each year as you're getting evaluated. And, I get that pressure all the time, peer-reviewed publications. So that has to be kind of high on my list of, if I'm working on a project, somewhere there needs to be a scholarly piece of work. And so one of the things that I really loved about this eclectic team or, partnerships that we have is that we all had different ways that we wanted to disseminate the work. And so, I know one of my goals was I really wanted to make sure that we had a peer-reviewed publication. We wanted to make sure that we disseminate this at ALHE and the Assessment Institute and NEAN and other assessment type of conferences, but getting this out there in different ways and in creative ways was important to us. And so we all took the lead at different times and changed our roles depending on what deliverable we were creating and what we were doing. And so, you know, again, having that partnership of people with different ideas and different backgrounds and different goals, but doing it in a respectful way and making sure that we're all kind of on that same page was important. And, you know, if you see the quote on the screen, giving grace, that, you know, I don't know if we ever could get work-life balance, but sometimes you're going to have to change deadlines. And so we were really upfront and honest and transparent about, hey, I can't get to this month. Can we table this till next month? Or can we possibly change my role because I just don't have the time anymore to dedicate it to that project? And so, you know, just being very gracious with each other made for a much better partnership. Would you
Still
agree?
have to remember that everyone's
Absolutely.
human as well, and things happen. So
Yeah, life happens to all of us. So we also, what really helped, again, this is also we started this partnership during the time of COVID. So we were kind of always already on technology anyway. We all live in different areas, but we had to use technology in order to move forward. I'm probably the least technology savvy, I will admit that, out of the whole group, but I've learned to embrace, though I tend to still be a little bit old school. I you know, there's something about meeting in person and handwriting and using highlighters that I still like, but I have learned to embrace technology. So what really has helped with this partnership and others is a lot of the productivity management tools. So for me, I'm a big Google Docs person. I like having my notes in Google Docs. Yeah, we create presentations, all of that within a shared Google folder, and everybody can edit, and it makes things a little bit easier that we always know where everything is. I've used Basecamp. That's what it's kind of more management type of software. I've been using that with LHE and some of the work that I do that I do there in terms of volunteer groups. And I really like it. It's very organized. I love getting emails reminding me. Sometimes I need that little push. I've used Trello for a couple projects. I know, Nikki, you've used some of the others. Do you have any words of wisdom or suggestions for some of these other helpful tools?
along the way, I have seen that it depends. It depends on the group that you're working with, what their level of expertise with technology is. So like someone said in one of the sticky notes previously, I tried to meet people where they are with their technology level. So whether that is, I've had faculty that I've worked with that are not tech savvy at all. They're still not welcoming that. They've been at the university for several decades. They like where they're at. So in-person meetings or even lunch meetings or something would work for them. But any of these other tools, and I can't wait to hear your all's recommendations, but I would use any number of these with the faculty and programs that I worked with, including Jennifer and the team, because it just depended on what we needed for that particular project or program. And we would go from there. Sometimes this tool works best, sometimes that doesn't. It can take a little bit of research to see what you need. But I do recommend trying to get something that is as most holistic as possible for yourself. That way you're not trapezing around several ones. Now, there's been many times that multiple tools for one program for me is what worked best for them. It was actually quicker just to do the multiple tools and get everything done than try to force them into one slot on a specific tool. So again, it just depends. This is where getting to know your people is key, talking with them, and again, meeting them where they are on not only assessment, but also the tools in which you have available through your institution or company, and then go from there. Try to figure out where everyone is and start with that baseline.
Yeah. And I think also too, what is really key is making sure whatever tools that you're using, everyone has the same access. There's no
Yeah.
hidden data. If it is agreed upon that you're all equal in this collaboration, you want to, I want to be able to check and see, you know, what my colleagues are doing. I don't want to, oh, here's the thematic analysis. No, I want to see the data. And I would hope that they would want to see, you know, my SPSS file, you know, just instead of just, here's this table, I've created this table from, you know, magic. Having that equal access, making sure all the files are shared and it's easy to find, makes things, again, for a little bit smoother working relationship in that collaboration. But
That
sometimes,
was something, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something it took me a little bit of time to figure out, because with my faculty previously, it was sometimes they just wanted to see just the aggregate results and be able to make their decisions for the program and base it off that. But then I also had programs that like to see the nitty gritty on everything, on how we came to those aggregate results and the process and stuff like that, right down to how did we collect this data? What's the process for that in the college? What state and federal reports require what data? So in at the end of the day, I just put everything in folders and shared it to everyone. That way, the programs that just wanted to see that last data visualization with the aggregate results, they could get it, take it, run with it. But the others could dig in and completely see everything. That's where I learned that transparency actually helped me build those relationships with those faculty and programs, because I was an open door to them. There was nothing hidden. There was nothing that seemed like I was going behind their back for anything. It really helped build their trust with me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When I work with some of my assessment clients, they just want to see the infographic or the executive summary. You know, they like, oh, I trust you. You did your analysis magic. Just tell me the results. And I have others that they want to see how I got to there. And so making sure that they have access to that sanitized data set, the code book, the analysis plan, every bit of information of how I cleaned and analyzed the data, I think is important. Also too, I mean, sometimes, and Nikki mentioned this, there's a learning curve, and you know, you've got to kind of gauge the comfortableness of everyone with different technology. And while I've always been comfortable with Zoom, and I've been doing online meetings and teaching online for years, even before COVID, I was not used to the live editing in meeting over Zoom and working in Google Docs in real time. And so with this particular partnership, I experienced that for the first time. We were working on our ALHE presentation for a couple years ago, or proposal for a couple years ago. Of course, it's like 10 o'clock at night, you know, let's do it at midnight. And, you know, I'm typing in the Google Doc, and Gina's coming in and she is deleting my words. And I'm like, what is happening? This is very stressful. So that first time was like, okay, I'm not sure I like this. But then after that, I'm like, why have I not been doing this before? Because before I would just type, send it through an email, wait for someone else to, you know, review it, give me track changes, email it back. And I'm like, and especially when you're doing that with multiple people, and then you don't always get the right file, like, boy, that was really not very efficient. And so doing everything in that shared folder, that shared document, or that shared project management app, again, sometimes there's a little stress involved, there's a learning curve, but I'm like, God, I can never go back to sending it through email. I mean, now it's like, I'm used to it. You want to delete my words? Okay, I'll still save a copy just in case. But I've gotten used to it, and it's really been very helpful as we've moved forward. And then when we can, those in-person meetups, you know, I had obviously I know Nikki and Gina was a student of mine for many, many years ago, but I had never met Emily in person. And we finally got to all meet each other at ALHE last year, have some nice dinners, and actually get to talk about research, but also just, you know, just make those in-person connections after working together, you know, for a year or two in this virtual world. So we'd love to hear from you. What software, and it can be some of the same ones that we talked about, what software, tools, or apps have you used in your collaborations? What works for you? You know, I'm always looking for better ways to organize. Let me stop sharing this and go to that Jamboard. Yep, shared files. Yeah, Jamboard, I mean, I've used it now for a couple of conference presentations. Mentimeter is also one that I'll use both in class and in presentations at Microsoft Teams. Yeah, I definitely keep it simple, Scholar. I still Google Docs, but for larger projects, I've used Slack, especially when I have multiple teams across the country. Sharing files, you can have multiple folders and have different conversations about different subtopics of your project. It's fairly easy to use, but it's definitely good for some of these larger projects, especially across multiple institutions.
Google
Yeah.
Docs for note taking and
Yep,
team.
Zoom and Google Docs. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys have any additional recommendations that you might have tried in the past, I am always open to new
Okay, I've
tools.
heard about it, not used it.
I love it.
Teams. And so, I
Would
mean,
be.
sometimes,
Not seen that in a long time.
yeah, we're limited. I mean, some,
Yeah.
you know, I'm at an R1, so I have a lot of different resources, which is nice, but there's some that, we can't use, or they promote, or they change, like as they're changing all of our software over the
Yeah.
next few months, different assessment software. Yeah, OneDrive. So a lot of lots of Microsoft tools. Great. And as Nikki had mentioned, I have yet to find that one perfect tool that I can use in every project except for Google Docs. I just, it will vary with, again, the comfortableness of the rest of my team, what they have available. And the same goes with any kind of analysis software. I sometimes have to change up what I'm using just based on that research collaboration. So no relationship is perfect. No partnership is perfect. There will sometimes be bumps along the road and different issues, but one of the things that Nikki and I have learned over the years with this partnership and others is we need to address conflicts immediately and be open-minded. And I think the key is just, be open-minded to different styles of work and different perceptions and different aspects of our experiences. And so you're going to run into some of these barriers, and in all of my projects, many of my projects, if we didn't have those initial conversations about what are the goals, like what is the end goal, and if we have divergent goals and our goals change, we need to have those conversations. So this has happened to me sometimes with some of my assessment projects where I start out with one client, and then because of the nature of the job, that assessment professional leaves the institution, and now that project is pawned off to someone else, and now I have a new main client. This has happened multiple times at this institution and my previous institution, where I start with one client, we have an agreement, this is what's going to happen, this is what I'm going to do for them, this is what they're going to give me, and then personnel changes and goals change. A new person comes in and they want something different, and so having those conversations and not ignoring the fact that, hey, there's been some leadership change, there's been some goal changes, we need to have these conversations and get back to the same place or make some modifications to what is expected from each of us. I would say that, and Nikki, if you want to jump in, miscommunication, ignoring communication is probably something that we've all had to deal with our partnerships. I know I'm guilty of it sometimes, and my colleagues are guilty of it. And I know Nikki has lots of stories here, but yeah, anything you want to jump in and talk about here?
Yeah, this slide in particular is really where that giving grace and remembering that people are human comes into play, because again, we are not immune to this as well, because some of these were actually hard lessons that I did myself. So for example, the miscommunication, I know I have not clearly identified in request what I need or conveyed exactly what I needed to faculty or other folks. information overload. I have dumped things on them that probably terrify them when they open the email. And lack of resources, this can go back to either your technology or your institution's available resources, especially if you are working on a team or with faculty across multiple institutions. Not all of us have access to the same things. So I've done that several times where, oh, I don't have access to this particular tool. I don't have access to this particular information through our library. Can you help get that settled into the project? Just remember that, yeah, you're human and so are they, but there can come a time when personality and process conflicts can just be a little too detrimental to
Mhm.
deal with in some projects. But sometimes you you can't divorce them per se because they're your faculty, I know, but you got to always remember to change gears and try to come at it from a different perspective, from a different lens somehow, to be able to talk to them.
Yeah, and we'll talk in a little bit about some strategies that we've utilized to address these issues and barriers, because you're going to encounter these. Nikki already talked a little bit about information overload. I've had my assessment clients, they just want to see the executive summary, the infographic. They're not interested in the data. So, I'll put it in a separate folder. It's clearly labeled. That way they have it if they do need it, but it's not something, I'm not giving them a 100-page report that is so text heavy that it's not going to be useful or impactful for them to go through that.
Yep.
I get a lot, especially, and again, I have the faculty hat on now, but I get a lot of requests at the very last minute. As the person who's in charge of all of the data, someone will email me. It's always on a Thursday. I don't know what Thursday is about. I'll get that Thursday email. Hey, you just finished collecting that survey data for us. Do you have an update? I need to give an update to the provost tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, this is all I could give you because I haven't cleaned the data. I haven't gone through that. It's just not enough time. But I can give you a sample size. I can give you some basic demographic information, but I can't give you the data. It's not instantaneous, even if it's an online surveys. And so, sometimes those unrealistic deadlines and requests, especially up against multiple projects, can be hard to deal with. And, the differing schedules, as a faculty member, I'm on a 9-month schedule. And so my days off and the way I organize my time is very different from Nikki, who's a 12-month employee, and then her days off and her downtimes are very different. And so making sure that those conversations happen as to when we can, schedule our meetings and what times do we ignore you and avoid asking you for anything, because this is the reporting time. I would never bother Nikki in June and July because all of her big assessment reports were due then. So I'm like, okay, I know that for the next 3 weeks, I'm not going to bother you because you
Yep.
have so much other stuff on your plate. And then as Nikki's already mentioned, we've mentioned, is that, sometimes we just don't have the resources. We're at different institutions. We don't have the support or the internal support.
Yeah.
I was on a partnership before and my then department chair was like, this isn't going to lead to a peer review publication. I don't want you to do this anymore. You need to stop this at the end of this contract and not renew it, because I'm not going to evaluate you. This is not something that I would evaluate you on. And so that's hard to hear. And you kind of have to kind of look at what you're able to do and what support you have to get that work done that you're passionate about. And then there's always, in any collaboration, any like personality and process conflicts. We all like to do things the way we like to do things. And so we have to have those conversations to make sure that we're all on the same page. So what barriers have you all encountered? Or other possible barriers could there be to a successful collaboration? Where do you see is that block? Where do you see is that potential issue if you're to go out there and put yourself out there to work with other faculty and assessment professionals on a variety of different research and assessment projects? It could be some of the ones that we've named, or things that are unique to maybe your situation. What other barriers do you see here? Again, you can go to the same Jamboard. It's slide 4 in that Jamboard.
If you have any different ones, we can talk about possible remedies for those as well as a group later on.
So I'm going to stop sharing this and go to the Jamboard.
Vague requests from faculty. Oh,
I know.
yes. Yes. Yeah. Not seeing the importance of
Yeah,
assessment.
I know.
That's a tough one, getting that buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah. Lack of culture of assessment. Yeah, not understanding. Yes. I get it. Many of my faculty colleagues, why do we have to do the SACS report? Why? I get it. They're doing May. Yeah, fear. Yeah, former
Yes.
SES administration, baggage. Yes. And it's hard when you don't have that culture of assessment and you don't have that good communication between faculty and the assessment professionals at your institution.
For the faculty and the administration as well, to
Absolutely.
convey the importance of that and how
Mhm.
much our accreditation and our ability to continue going forward relies on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, these are great. But yeah, that lack of culture, that's probably one I hear quite a bit.
Yes.
It's a thing we have to do, but we're not sure why we have to do it. That's what I hear quite a bit. And yeah, turnover. Oh, that for so
That's
many
a good point.
projects that I had one where in the contract, I had 3 different main clients because the
Yep.
turnover and people would just move into different positions at the institution. And so they just would throw that project at someone else. But, oh, now you're working with Jennifer to get this assessment done. I know these are great. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. So what advice or suggestions do we have for you? Nikki, I know hears this quite a bit because she's in my classes. Keep it simple, scholar, because I think that the more you make things complicated, that it's going to bring about those issues and increase the chance of having barriers as you're trying to work together as a team. But the biggest is that communication plan, consistent and transparency, and know that things can change. In my partnerships that have worked really well, we have said, okay, we're going to meet once a month or once a quarter. We set that date, and then as we get closer, if we need to make adjustments or one person needs to not be there because they have that last minute meeting, no problem. We'll take the minutes, we'll catch that person up. Is making sure that, again, there's some consistency in when you're going to meet, how you're going to meet, what information are you going to share with the faculty, which information you're going to share with your assessment colleagues. And then for me, especially if I'm being hired by an organization or unit on campus that wants me to do assessment for and provide a service, so versus a more kind of research partnership, I'm just conducting a service for them, I have memorandum of understanding. So we sit down and say, okay, what are the goals? What do you want to get out of this? What deadlines do you have in terms of your reporting? And then we sit down and we write out a memorandum of understanding. So I only do that when it's that more formal type of partnership. But, even with, the research partnerships, we do sit down and we list out in Google Docs, like, what's our ideal timeline? And then what's the plan B? As we've had to, especially with COVID, what's the plan B, plan C, plan D? And then we try to come up with, okay, let's try to get this done in the next 3 weeks. Let's try to get this done by the end of the semester. And then knowing that at least, and this has been really helpful for me is, yes, one of my things I have to do is peer review publications, but that's not everybody's goal. And so figuring out different ways to disseminate this information. And then especially when I'm working with my assessment colleagues and clients, engaging them in their assessment results, not just to, here's this report, here's this PowerPoint presentation that's, kind of boring and your eyes glaze over. But, Nikki and I have done this now a few times with different assessment clients. We do data parties, we do Pecha Kucha presentations. I bring Play-Doh and we sit down there and we engage our clients in the data. And so, getting to be creative. And I know you probably hate this word, we've heard it 1,000 times during COVID, knowing when to pivot. And so sometimes we have had to say, you know what, we need to move in a different direction, or we need to change up this collaboration, because we're stuck. We're not moving forward. We utilize different collaboration tools depending on that partnership and what people are comfortable with, but we need to be transparent. We need to be organized, and knowing when do we have to ask for help. Bringing on people onto your team that brings different viewpoints and different skill sets and have different life experiences to become that assessment professional has been so invaluable. To see assessment from a different lens has made our projects again, more holistic and much more engaging. It's not just, here's my faculty perception of what assessment is, or here's my, Nikki's perception of being the woman of many hats, the N of one in an office, and that perception. And so making sure, seeking out other experts and resources, and sometimes going to my department chair. I have a different department chair, and hey, this project's really important to me. Can I leverage some internal support to get some of this done? And probably the most beneficial for me, especially over the last few years, is really putting myself out there within professional organizations. I think this is probably now 7 or 8 years ago. I was following, I'm big on Twitter. I use Twitter every day. To me, it's how I get my information. I know it may blow up soon, but I'm still there. And I interacted with M.S.I.S, and he's like, oh, LHE. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been to that conference a couple times. I really wasn't involved. You need to volunteer. And that's how I started volunteering for LHE. First on their communications committee, got to know some more people, moved over to the conference committee, but back to the communications committee, now on a couple of different publication committees. But it's been so invaluable just to meet different assessment professionals from all over the country and start these different collaborations and hear about what they're passionate about and what are those hot topics. And so that has been really great. And so, going on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., getting all the emails from the different assessment organizations. What are those different conferences that I can talk about some of this work that we're doing? And so putting yourself out there. And I'm not shy. I'll email and say, hey, I really like your work. I read this, any chance you want to collaborate, and love to do a follow-up project if you have any interest in that. And so the worst they can say is no, right? So, put yourself out there if you want to form those collaborations. Nikki, you want to add anything?
No, not really. The only thing that I can think of is when it comes to faculty, the hardest thing for me was knowing when to learn to pivot. And that, in that sense, when I was working with those programs and faculty, was even though you've put sometimes a lot of work into a project or process that you're collecting data for their assessment for their program, sometimes it can really hurt to have to back up and punt and adjust it because this tool or this system is not working in this class in this particular way, or in, something like that. It's better to back up and punt and go at it from a different angle than continue to circle the drain and make it harder on yourself later on. Sometimes that would take me seeking out the other experts because as an N of one for the college, I took all of that on myself for a long time without reaching out to IT or even other assessment folk on campuses. Sometimes that was my fault. I didn't reach out. And once I finally got to my breaking point, essentially, okay, something's going to have to give because my faculty, we're not having a good relationship because this is not going well. We need to change how we're doing it. I'm not sure how to do that. So I need to start reaching out. And the introvert in me shivered for a long time over that. But once I got over that and finally reached out to IT and other folks and say, hey, how can I go about this a different way? How can I make this easier? Are there some trainings where I can get either the faculty or me in to help get a systems up to par or come at it just from a different direction in that? Sometimes it can be simply humbling yourself like that. And I say that purely from the fact that that's what it took for me at a certain point to finally reach out and get involved with either those other people on campus or other professional organizations, whether that is at your state level, regional level, or national. Don't be afraid to reach out. That was a hard hill for me to climb.
No, thank you. Well, we have a few resources in that shared folder. These two are great. They talk about, what it's like to have that faculty assessment professional relationship, what's worked for them, what lessons learned. Both of these articles are in that shared folder, so you can easily download them, but this is the citation. And then these three links are just some links to, here are some great collaboration tools, many of which you've already mentioned and we've mentioned, but also some just select suggestions for, what is important to a successful collaboration. And, we've seen a lot of overlap in what is out there in the literature and what we've talked about: communication, transparency, mutual respect. And so hopefully you find these resources helpful. And I already see some of you are already in the Ask Us Anything. So
Yes.
we have the last 10 minutes to ask us anything, and we will do our best to address as many of your questions over the next 10 minutes. And if we can't, I will go back in and I can address these and then put them in that shared folder. Like I said, I will take all of these Jamboards and save them and put them in that shared folder so you have this information. So let me stop sharing this screen and go to the Ask Us Anything Jamboard.
Jennifer and Nikki, you have a lot of great questions in the Jamboard.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes, this is great. I love it. First one off the bat, will you be at AALHE? Unfortunately, I will not. I don't believe Jennifer's going, but I will be over my head in dissertation, data collection, and stuff like that during that time. So no, unfortunately, I won't be
I'm
there.
so sad about it. We just didn't have, our program moved to a different department this year, and then the funding just wasn't there. And so I had to make some difficult choices because it is at the end of our fiscal year. So I sadly will not be at New Orleans. It is my favorite conference. Gina, one of our other research partners, Gina Palinopoulos, will be there. But I will be there in spirit. I really wish there was a virtual option because I'd stalk y'all on Hoover. I love that app, but there's no virtual option for ALHE this year. I put it on my schedule though for LHE in Portland the following year. So I'm going to make sure that I have that funding to be able to go, because it really is, everybody's just so welcoming. I remember my first one, I think that was in Kentucky, gosh knows how many years ago now. But everyone was my first, everyone was just so nice. And so I really liked that conference. So I hope you all have those same experiences if you're going. All right, so that you chose the easy one to answer, Nikki. Let's see. This one, I'm going to give this one to you because this is, you're the assessment professional. Do you think maintaining a teaching role is important for full-time IE folks? In other words, do faculty listen better if you're also in the classroom?
Ooh,
Yeah, no, that is a great
because
question.
I have never been in the classroom. I have never been a teacher of record for a class at the university level, or in my case, I worked in a college of education. I had never taught in K-12. So yes, that was a very hard hurdle for me to get over with them initially, not going to lie, because they didn't see me as one of them, essentially. But what I did was it took a lot of conversations. And some of them were difficult because I had to understand where they were coming from. I had to understand what their flow for their classrooms were like, what their flow for their professional life were like. When do they typically work on research? When do they typically advise students? Sometimes I had to learn all those things and learn how to live like them, essentially. And then how can I incorporate that into my processes? Because that took the first couple of years in my position, was us just talking through things. Okay, let's try it in this way. Let's make sure that doesn't interfere with your hardest time on this and your hardest time on that. So it took a lot of those sometimes very difficult conversations, but I've slowly built that trust and that collegiality between me and the faculty and other teachers in the field, because specifically in teacher ed, we also worked with the K-12 schools around us in the region. So a lot of them saw me as an outsider until I finally just sat down and just talked to them. It took a lot, but we finally got to a camaraderie between us. Okay, if I do this for you, there's always got to be a little bit of give and take. And I also see, how do you address personality conflicts when working on a project together? It's a lot of the same discussions that we have, a lot of hard conversations sometimes, but I was always open and honest. And in those personality conflicts with those teachers, the first thing I tell people, even to this day, is I am an open book. I will tell you anything. Ask me anything. Just make sure you actually want to know the answer before you ask, because I will give you a very blunt answer on how I go about things. And after time of them seeing that consistency in that, it built that trust, because they knew what they were getting with me at that point. What you see is what you get. And they knew if they had a question or anything like that, they could come to me for that. So a lot of those issues is just a lot of key communication. And again, it will not probably happen overnight. But, and if that's not something that you're comfortable with, that is something that can be learned over time. I won't say that I was great at it right out the door, but again, flexing that muscle, communication muscle over time helps you become better at it. It's kind of like stats. If you don't use it, I lose it. So I always come back to it, but you've got to talk things out. That's communication is a key aspect to a lot of the issues, especially when it comes to personality conflicts and just understanding each other.
There's a question that I definitely want to take. So I want to help faculty see how their assessment work can be published. This really excites me. But I hear assessment isn't research. Oh, I hate that all the time. How do I address this? And this is where you can bring faculty to the table and show them all the great places that they can take the work that they're doing in assessment within their own classroom, within their own college, their division, and disseminate it out there to not only other assessment professionals, but other faculty that are doing some of the same things. And so we have intersection, we have research and practice and assessment, emerging dialogues. So emerging dialogues and intersection are both ALHG publications. I'm actually I'm a volunteer on both of those publications. So I review articles, but it's a great way to get all of the work that you are doing with your faculty out there to the public. And so I would show them, here's some examples. Here's what a typical emerging dialogues article looks like. It's much more practitioner focused, it's shorter articles. It's not necessarily research based. An intersection, a little bit more research based. Research and practice and assessment definitely need to have some, usually some type of data, but you can kind of show, here are some of the different publication outlets out there that you can take some of this great assessment work and disseminate it. Again, depending on the kind of institution you're in, you might have some faculty say it has to have an impact factor. I can't publish. Okay, then go to PAIR, go to some of the other journals that have that impact factor. But if that is not the only thing that their department chair looks at, there's a lot of great outlets to disseminate this information. So, and like I said, everybody that I've worked with on the different publication teams, we want you to get your work out there. We want to help you make that article better, to get that out there. It's not just, oh, this is terrible, let's reject it. We really do want to work with you to just help you disseminate your work. And going to these conferences helps too, is you bounce off those ideas. And usually all of the different journals have some session at ALHG to talk about how to publish this work. And so I highly recommend going to those sessions at the conferences, reaching out to those that have been publishing, and that, hey, how did you get started? Do you have any advice?
Just a couple that I'll hit really quickly. Do you publish your assessment outcomes for the university and/or public to see? In my experience, I don't know how this is nationally or anything. In my experience, that has been depending on the policies at my university or college level, but also my accreditors or state requirements as well, depending on which accreditation institute it is. So in generally, yes, I would recommend publishing those. to some extent. Don't make anything identifiable, obviously,
Mhm.
but show where you shine. If it's not required for you to do anything specific, show where you shine, regardless. But really, that really depends on where you are and who you're reporting to and such. Like for CAPE, for teacher ed, we had to show that we had a full website dedicated to where we showed the public how our students were meeting or not meeting certain standards. But in others, it was absolutely okay. Do you have a link to your data or just a quick show of example of what you do? Sure, that's fine. That's all we need. The other is, what if people are not meeting deadlines? How do I address that? I have asked if these deadlines are unrealistic and given grace. Now that I've only had to really deal with that in an extreme level a few times over 10 years. So I'm thankful for that. But when you've got hard deadlines, especially those like Title II, for example, it's got a several $1,000 fine if you are a day late or something like that. You've got those that you have to meet. When it was getting too close for me to be comfortable with saying that I don't know if I can turn this around quick enough to get that report in on time, I would start sending out those clear, concise emails, lining out what I need specifically, reminding that we've got this deadline coming up, and here are the consequences for those if they aren't met. So I would get a little more forceful in that. I'm not forceful, but just a little more clear and concise in those emails. They could tell it's different than my previous ones. It's more conversation type. So I would bring those forward. There's only been twice in 10 years that I had to copy someone's chair on it, or even above that. That is my Hail Mary. That is, we're going to be fined $20,000 this week if we don't get this in. That is my Hail Mary. I use that as an absolute last resort because I don't want that on anybody. But when you've got things to do that have consequences to you and your programs that are that high stake, you got to do what you got to do. But sometimes they might get sick of seeing my emails by the end of it, because I will start sending them more regularly, or just casually stop by office if I'm on campus. Hey, how you doing? You want to go to lunch? Let's go grab something. You doing okay? Just check in on them a little bit. I've had one or two faculty that life events happened and they didn't look at email. They didn't check with anybody or anything. Things just happened and it took them away immediately. Didn't know that until I went to check on them. At that time, even their chair didn't know. Oh, they've been out since Wednesday because their mother was in the hospital, or something like that. So always remember that. But if it's been over consecutive weeks or something like that, up your game a little bit, but always remember that they are human, but up your game and I like just using those last resorts as just that, because otherwise that can damage that trust a little bit. I know that is very subjective for how some people will go about it, but that's just my method of magic there.
Thank you, Nikki. I know we're out of time.
We
and we
are,
get
yes.
to go through all of the questions, but I will go back onto the Jamboard and try to answer the ones that we didn't
Yep.
address. Like I said, I will save each of those slides and then upload it by the end of the day today to that shared folder.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer and Nikki. I think we could have a whole nother hour talking with you about how to collaborate or how to foster collaborations between faculty and assessment professionals. I know I learned a lot, and just a couple tidbits. Operate with empathy and give grace. I think those are two things that I have to always keep in mind. Thank you to both of you. Please check out our Knowledge Center for more information on the webinars or the classes or the workshops coming up. We also have a lot of white papers, a lot of blogs going on, and an email with the recording will be sent out within the next week or so. So thank you to Jennifer and Nikki once again, and hope to see all of you at another Weave event. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Feel free to reach out.